The rifle barrel pressed so hard against my temple I could feel the metal ring it would leave behind if I lived long enough to worry about bruises. "Please," I whispered, my voice cracking like dry timber in winter. "I'll work for free. I'll do anything. Just don't." Ezra Blackwood's finger tightened on the trigger, and I heard that terrible click that meant my next breath might be my last. The sound echoed off the canyon walls surrounding his cabin like thunder promising a storm. Blood from where I'd clawed at the ropes binding my wrists dripped onto the pine floor beneath my knees. The metallic taste of fear filled my mouth. "Your daddy should have thought about that before he put you up as collateral," Ezra growled, his voice like gravel grinding under wagon wheels. The scar running from his left eye to his jawline twisted as he spoke. "A man's word is his bond out here, girl, even when that word is spoken over cards and whiskey." I could smell gunpowder on his breath, tobacco staining his teeth yellow as corn silk. His eyes held no mercy, black as the depths of a mine shaft. Outside, wind howled through the pines like the voices of the damned. And somewhere in that wilderness, wolves were singing their hunger to the moon. This wasn't how a 17-year-old girl was supposed to die. Not on her knees in a stranger's cabin, begging for a life that had been traded away like a sack of flour. Not with her father's debts written in her blood. "I didn't choose this," I managed to say, though my throat felt raw as sandpaper. "I never knew about his gambling. I never knew he would..." "Choose?" Ezra laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl like spiders walking up my spine. "Girl, we don't get to choose much in this world. Your daddy chose to sit down at my table. He chose to bet money he didn't have. And when the cards turned against him, he chose to offer me something else entirely." The rope around my wrists had rubbed them raw, and I could feel warmth trickling down my palms. Every breath came shallow and quick, like a rabbit sensing the hawk's shadow. The cabin felt smaller with each passing second, the walls pressing in like a coffin made of logs and broken promises. "What are you going to do to me?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Ezra's smile revealed teeth that had seen too much violence, tasted too much blood. "That depends on you, Sarah Elizabeth Morrison. Your daddy told me all about you during our little game. How you can cook and clean and mend clothes. How you're smart as a whip and stubborn as a mule. How you've been taking care of him since your mama died of the fever." My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might burst. How did he know so much? What else had Papa told this monster while he was losing everything we owned? "He also told me," Ezra continued, pressing the rifle harder against my skull, "about your mama's wedding ring. The one you wear on a chain around your neck. The one that's worth enough to cover half his debt." My hand instinctively moved toward my throat, where Mama's ring hung beneath my torn dress. It was all I had left of her. The only thing that proved she'd existed, that she'd loved me before the sickness took her away. "But that ring's not why you're here, girl." Ezra's voice dropped to a whisper that made my blood turn to ice water. "You're here because your daddy offered me something much more valuable than gold." The wolves outside grew louder, their howls weaving together like a funeral song. I could hear them moving through the trees, getting closer to the cabin, getting closer to us. "He offered me a chance to start over, to have family again, to not spend every winter alone in these mountains with nothing but ghosts and regrets for company." My stomach dropped like a stone down a well. This wasn't about debt. This wasn't about money. This was about something far worse, something that would destroy whatever was left of my soul. But this story begins 3 days earlier, when I still believed my father was a good man. I was hanging laundry behind our shack when I heard the horses approaching. 3 of them, their hooves drumming against the hard-packed earth like a war party's drums. Papa had been gone for 2 days, and I'd been surviving on cornbread and worry, wondering if this time he wouldn't come back at all. The riders who brought him home weren't the kind of men you invite for Sunday dinner. Their faces were carved from leather and bad intentions, their guns worn smooth from use. Papa slumped in his saddle like a scarecrow, his shirt torn and his face bearing the purple evidence of someone's fists. "Sarah," he called out, his voice thick with shame and something else. Something that made my skin prickle with warning. "Come here, daughter. We need to talk." I dropped the wet sheet I'd been hanging and walked toward them on legs that felt like they were made of river water. The tallest rider, a man with silver hair and cruel eyes, watched me approach with the intensity of a hawk studying a mouse. "This her?" he asked Papa without taking his gaze off me. Papa nodded, and I saw tears cutting tracks through the dirt on his cheeks. "This is my Sarah, my only child." The man dismounted and walked a slow circle around me, like I was livestock at market. His spurs jingled with each step, a sound that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. Up close, I could see the scar on his face, the way his left eye didn't quite track with the right. "You're Ezra Blackwood," I whispered, recognizing him from the stories mothers told their children to keep them from wandering into the mountains alone. "Smart girl?" His smile revealed those yellow teeth. "Your daddy's told me so much about you, Sarah. How you cook his meals and mend his clothes. How you've been the woman of the house since your mama passed." "Papa, what's happening?" I looked at my father, searching his face for some explanation that would make sense of this nightmare. He couldn't meet my eyes. "I got into a game, Sarah. A poker game that went bad. Real bad." "How bad?" But I already knew. I could see it in the way his shoulders shook, in the way he kept looking at Ezra like a dog that expects to be kicked. "I owed him $800, Papa whispered. "Money I don't have. Money I'll never have. $800 might as well have been 8,000. We barely scraped together enough each month to keep flour in the barrel and coal in the stove. Papa's drinking had cost him job after job, and the few coins he earned doing odd work around town disappeared faster than morning dew. But your daddy's a clever man," Ezra said, still circling me like a predator. "He found a way to settle his debt." The understanding hit me like a physical blow, stealing the breath from my lungs. "Number Papa, you didn't." "I had no choice, Sarah. He would have killed me. He would have killed us both." Ezra laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Now that's not entirely true, is it, Morrison? I gave you options. You could have signed over the deed to this place, could have worked off the debt over the next 5 years. But you chose the third option." I backed away from both of them, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What third option?" "Your hand in marriage," Ezra said, the words falling like stones into still water. "Your daddy offered me a wife to warm my bed and keep my house. Someone young and strong who can give me sons." The world tilted sideways. I grabbed the porch railing to keep from falling, splinters digging into my palms. "I won't. I won't go with you. I won't marry you." "You don't have a choice, girl." Ezra's hand dropped to the gun at his hip. "A debt is a debt. Your daddy's word is binding." I looked at Papa, desperate for him to stand up, to fight, to be the man I'd always believed him to be. Instead, he just stood there with tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. But if you don't go with him, he'll kill me. He'll burn down the house. I'll hunt you both down like rabid dogs," Ezra finished. "The choice is simple, girl. Come with me willingly and keep your father breathing, or watch me put a bullet between his eyes right here in your front yard." The laundry I'd been hanging fluttered in the wind like surrender flags. Everything I'd known, everything I'd believed about my life, crumbled like old paper in fire. My father had sold me, actually sold me to pay his gambling debts. "I need to pack," I said, my voice sounding like it came from someone else. "No need." Ezra mounted his horse. "Where we're going, you won't need much. Just the clothes on your back and that pretty ring your mama left you." As they bound my hands and lifted me onto the spare horse, I saw our neighbors watching from their windows. Mrs. Henderson across the way, the Jameson boys from down the hill, all of them knowing what was happening, none of them lifting a finger to help. The mountains ahead looked like the edge of the world, dark and forbidding under storm clouds. Somewhere in those peaks, Ezra Blackwood had a cabin waiting. Somewhere in that wilderness, my old life would end and something else would begin. But I swore on my mother's ring that whatever happened next, I wouldn't break. I wouldn't give this monster the satisfaction of seeing me surrender completely. I had no idea how wrong I could be. The cabin squatted in a clearing like a predator waiting to pounce. All dark logs and narrow windows that watched our approach with dead glass eyes. We'd been riding for 6 hours through pine forests, so thick they blocked out the sun, following trails that seemed to exist only in Ezra's twisted mind. My wrists were raw from the rope, my legs numb from gripping the horse's sides. Every muscle in my body screamed for rest. But the sight of that isolated cabin made me forget my physical pain. This place was a tomb, a prison carved from timber and sealed with desperation. "Welcome home, wife," Ezra said, dismounting with the easy grace of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. "Hope you like what I've done with the place." The other 2 riders, who'd barely spoken during the journey, began unloading supplies from their pack horses. I caught fragments of their whispered conversation carried on the mountain wind. "You sure about this, Ezra?" "Girl's got fight in her." "That's what makes it interesting, Jake. Broken things ain't much fun." They hauled me down from the horse like a sack of grain, my legs buckling when my feet hit solid ground. The air up here was thin and sharp, carrying scents of pine sap and something else. Something that reminded me of the smokehouse back home when Papa butchered hogs. "Come on, Sarah. Let me show you around your new home." Ezra's hand clamped down on my shoulder like a steel trap. The cabin's interior was darker than I'd expected, lit by a single oil lamp that threw dancing shadows against the walls. Animal pelts covered every surface: bear, wolf, deer, and others I couldn't identify in the dim light. The smell of old blood and unwashed men hung heavy in the air. But it was the photographs that made my blood turn to ice water. They covered one entire wall, dozens of them tacked up like hunting trophies. All of young women, all with long, dark hair like mine, all with the same terrified expression in their eyes. "My collection," Ezra said, noticing where I was looking. "Every girl who's shared this cabin with me over the past 10 years. "Where are they now?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. "Some ran. Some fought. Some tried to kill me in my sleep." His finger traced along the photographs, lingering on each face. "They're all out there in the woods now, keeping the wolves fed and the soil rich." I tried to run then. Desperation gave my exhausted legs strength I didn't know they possessed. I made it 3 steps toward the door before Ezra's arm wrapped around my waist like an iron band. "Easy there, wildcat. We haven't even had our wedding night yet." He threw me onto a pile of furs in the corner, and I landed hard enough to knock the wind from my lungs. When I tried to scramble away, Jake and the other man blocked my path, their faces showing the kind of anticipation that made me want to vomit. "Please," I gasped, hating the word as soon as it left my mouth. "I'll cook for you. I'll clean. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't." "Oh, you'll do all that and more," Ezra said, unbuckling his gun belt. "But first, we're going to get properly acquainted." That's when I heard it. A sound that stopped everyone in the cabin cold. Howling. Not the distant wolves we'd been hearing all day, but something much closer. Something that sounded almost human in its anguish. What the hell? Jake moved toward the window, his hand already on his pistol. The howling came again, and this time I could hear words buried in the sound. A name, repeated over and over, like a prayer or a curse. "Emma, Emma, Emma." Ezra's face went white as fresh snow. "That's impossible. She's been dead for 3 years." "Who's Emma?" I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. The third man, who'd been silent since we arrived, finally spoke. "His daughter, the one who got lost in a blizzard while he was off hunting. They never found the body." "Shut up, Marcus," Ezra snarled, but his hands were shaking now. "She's dead. I saw her tracks disappear over the cliff myself." The howling grew louder, seeming to come from all directions at once. And underneath it, I could hear something else. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling the cabin. "Emma's coming home, Papa," a voice whispered through the walls. "Young, female, heartbroken. Emma's so cold, Papa. Why didn't you come looking for her?" Ezra grabbed his rifle and moved toward the door, his face twisted with something between grief and terror. "Stay here, all of you. Don't move until I get back." "You're not leaving us alone with that thing out there," Jake protested. "That thing is my daughter," Ezra roared. "She's my little girl, and if she's somehow still alive..." He never finished the sentence. The door exploded inward, torn clean off its hinges by something with impossible strength. Wind howled through the opening, extinguishing the lamp and plunging us into darkness. In that darkness, I heard Jake scream, a wet gurgling sound that ended abruptly. Then Marcus was shouting, his gun firing wildly into the shadows. Muzzle flashes lit the cabin like lightning, showing glimpses of movement too quick and strange to follow. Something grabbed my ankle and dragged me across the floor. I clawed at the rough wood planks, splinters tearing at my fingernails. Then I was outside in the cold mountain air, being pulled toward the tree line by hands that felt like winter itself. Behind me, the cabin burned. Ezra's screams mixed with the crackling flames and that terrible, mournful howling that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was a figure standing in the firelight, pale as moonlight, with long dark hair and eyes like empty graves. Emma Blackwood had come home at last. I woke to the sound of my own chattering teeth and the feeling of ice crystals forming in my hair. Dawn light filtered through a canopy so thick it might have been twilight, casting everything in shades of green and shadow. My body ached like I'd been trampled by horses, and when I tried to move, pain shot through my shoulder like lightning. "You're awake." The voice came from somewhere above me. I looked up to see a girl perched on a fallen log like some woodland spirit, her bare feet dangling in the morning air. She couldn't have been more than 15, with tangled dark hair that hung past her shoulders and skin so pale it seemed to glow in the dim light. "You're Emma," I whispered, my voice raw from screaming. She tilted her head like a curious bird. "Daddy used to call me that, before he stopped looking for me, before he decided I was better off dead." I tried to sit up, and she was beside me in an instant, moving with inhuman speed. Her hand on my shoulder felt like touching winter itself, cold enough to burn. Don't move too fast. You hit your head when I pulled you out of there. Her eyes, which I'd thought were empty in the firelight, held depths of sadness that made my heart clench. I had to get you away before the fire spread to the trees. The cabin, Ezra, the other men. The memories came flooding back, and I struggled to make sense of what I'd witnessed. What happened to them? Emma's expression darkened like storm clouds gathering over the peaks. Daddy's alive. He always was harder to kill than the others. Jake and Marcus, well, they learned what happens to men who hurt little girls in my woods. Your woods? I've been living out here for 3 years, learning things, becoming things. She stood and walked to the edge of our small clearing, her movements fluid as water. The mountains change you when you stay long enough. When you die and come back wrong. I finally managed to sit up, though my head spun like a child's top. We were in a grove of ancient pines, their trunks so massive that 3 men holding hands couldn't have encircled them. Somewhere nearby, I could hear water running over stones. I saw your photograph in the cabin. You're not the first girl he's brought up here. Emma's laugh was like wind chimes made of broken glass. Oh, I know about the others. I've been watching him for a long time, watching and waiting and learning to hate. She turned back to me, and I saw something predatory flicker across her features. He took you because you looked like me, like I used to look anyway. The resemblance was undeniable now that I saw her clearly. The same dark hair, the same bone structure, even the same stubborn set to her jaw. But where my eyes held hope, however faded, hers held only winter. Why did you save me? Because you're not broken yet. Emma knelt beside me, her cold fingers touching my cheek with surprising gentleness. The others, they were already halfway to madness by the time I found them. But you still have fight in you. Still have something worth saving. A wolf howl echoed through the trees, closer than any natural wolf should have been. Emma tilted her head, listening to something I couldn't hear. He's coming. Daddy's tracking us. And he's not alone. Her smile revealed teeth that seemed sharper than they should have been. He's brought friends from town. Men with guns and dogs and torches. Then we need to run. We need to get as far away from here as possible. No. Emma stood, and shadows seemed to gather around her like living things. Running is what got me killed the first time. This time we're going to finish what he started. Through the trees, I could hear voices calling back and forth. Men's voices, rough with tobacco and determination. They were spreading out, forming a search line, treating this like a hunt. Sarah Morrison. Ezra's voice boomed through the forest. I know you're out there, girl. Come back now, and I'll make your death quick. Emma laughed, and the sound made birds explode from the trees in panic. He still thinks he's the monster in this story. There's 6 of them at least, I said, straining to count the different voices. How can we possibly? You're thinking like someone who's still alive. Emma's form seemed to flicker, becoming transparent for a moment before solidifying again. I don't have to worry about bullets anymore, or fire, or any of the things that used to scare little girls. The voices were getting closer. I could hear dogs barking now, following our scent through the underbrush. In minutes, they'd find our hiding place. I want you to do something for me, Emma said, her voice taking on an urgency I hadn't heard before. When this is over, when Daddy and his friends are feeding the wolves, I want you to go back down the mountain. I want you to tell people what happened here. What about you? What about us? Her smile was infinitely sad. There is no us, Sarah. There's a living girl who deserves a chance at life. And there's a dead one who needs to finish her business with the man who killed her. The first dog burst into our clearing, a massive hound with scarred flanks and foam around its muzzle. It took one look at Emma and whimpered, backing away with its tail between its legs. "Good dog," Emma whispered. "You can smell the death on me, can't you?" "There! Over here," a man's voice called out from behind the fleeing hound. Emma turned to me one last time, her face peaceful for the first time since I'd met her. "Hide behind the big pine. Don't come out until the screaming stops." Then she was moving toward the approaching voices, and with each step, she became something less human and more terrible. Her skin grew paler, her hair darker, her eyes deeper, until they were like looking into abandoned wells. The screaming started 30 seconds later. I pressed myself against the massive pine trunk, bark cutting into my palms as the forest erupted in chaos around me. Men's voices rose in terror and confusion, punctuated by gunshots that echoed off the canyon walls like thunder. The dogs had gone silent except for occasional whimpers that sounded almost human in their fear. "What is that thing?" someone screamed. "Shoot it! Keep shooting!" But the bullets passed through Emma like she was made of morning mist, and her laughter drifted between the trees like smoke from a funeral pyre. I heard Ezra roaring orders, trying to rally his men, but panic had taken hold of them like wildfire. One by one, the voices went silent. When the forest finally grew quiet, I counted to 100 before emerging from my hiding place. The clearing looked like a battlefield painted in shadow and blood. 3 men lay scattered among the pine needles, their weapons useless beside them. The dogs were nowhere to be seen, probably running back toward town with their tails between their legs. Emma stood in the center of it all, no longer flickering between states. She looked solid again, human again, except for her eyes. Those remained deep as winter lakes, holding secrets I didn't want to know. "Where's Ezra?" I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. "Gone. For now." Emma's voice carried disappointment like a mother whose child had misbehaved. "He's cleverer than the others. When he saw what I'd become, he ran deeper into the mountains instead of fighting. Will he come back?" "Oh yes. Men like Daddy always come back. They can't help themselves." She moved toward me with that fluid grace, and I noticed she cast no shadow despite the bright morning sun. "But not today. Today, you get to go home." The word hit me like a physical blow. Home. After everything that had happened, after seeing horrors that would haunt my dreams forever, the idea of returning to my old life seemed impossible. What about my father? He sold me. He traded me away like I was livestock. Emma's expression softened with something that might have been pity. "Broken men do broken things, Sarah. Your daddy's drowning in guilt and whiskey, wondering if you're still alive. Wondering if he can ever make things right." We walked together through the forest, following trails that Emma knew by heart. She told me stories as we traveled, about the 3 years she'd spent learning the mountain's secrets, about the spirits that dwelled in the deepest caves, about the way death changed you when you refused to stay buried. "I used to be afraid of everything," she said as we reached a rocky outcrop that overlooked the valley below. "Afraid of the dark, afraid of being alone, afraid of disappointing Daddy. Fear makes you small, Sarah, makes you weak." In the distance, I could see the smoke rising from our little town's chimneys. From up here, it looked peaceful as a picture book, all neat rows of houses and tree-lined streets. It was hard to believe that such ordinary evil could exist in such an ordinary place. "Will I see you again?" I asked. Emma was already fading, becoming translucent in the afternoon light. "I'll be watching, making sure you're safe, making sure no one else tries to hurt you." Her smile held all the warmth her physical form lacked. "And someday, when you're old and gray and ready to let go, maybe I'll show you the secret paths through these mountains, the ones that lead to places where death isn't the ending." Then she was gone, leaving only the scent of pine needles and winter air. The walk down the mountain took me 6 hours. My legs shook with exhaustion, my torn dress caught on every branch and thorn, but I kept moving. By the time I reached the outskirts of town, the sun was setting behind the peaks, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. I found Papa sitting on our front porch, staring at the mountains like a man waiting for Judgment Day. He'd aged 10 years in the 3 days I'd been gone, his hair grayer, his shoulders more bent beneath the weight of what he'd done. "Sarah." He stood so quickly he nearly fell, reaching toward me with trembling hands. "Dear God, Sarah, is it really you?" "It's me, Papa." I climbed the porch steps slowly, each board creaking under my weight. "I'm home." He wrapped his arms around me and sobbed into my hair, his whole body shaking with relief and remorse. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought I'd killed you. I thought you were dead because of what I did." "I should be dead," I said, pulling back to look into his red-rimmed eyes. "Ezra Blackwood should have killed me just like he killed all the others. But something saved me, Papa. Something that used to be his daughter." I told him everything then, about the cabin and the photographs, about Emma's transformation and the justice she'd brought to those dark woods. I watched his face grow pale as moonlight as he understood the true scope of his betrayal. "I'll never touch cards again," he whispered. "I'll never take another drink. I swear it on your mother's grave." Promises are easy to make, Papa. Keeping them is what matters. That night, as I lay in my own bed for the first time in what felt like years, I heard wolves howling in the mountains. But mixed with their voices was something else. A young girl's laughter, wild and free and terrible. Emma was keeping her word. She was watching. And somewhere up in those dark peaks, Ezra Blackwood was learning what it meant to be hunted by something that refused to stay dead. I pulled Mama's ring from beneath my nightgown and held it up to catch the moonlight streaming through my window. Some debts, I realized, could never be paid with money or promises. Some debts required blood and justice and the kind of reckoning that echoed through mountains like thunder. But for now, I was safe. For now, I was home. And if the nightmares came, if the memories of that terrible cabin tried to drag me back into darkness, I would remember Emma's words about fear making you small. I would remember that sometimes the dead protected the living better than the living ever could. 6 months later, they found Ezra Blackwood's body at the bottom of Devil's Canyon, torn apart by what the sheriff claimed were wild animals. But I knew better. I knew that Emma had finally gotten her revenge, finally put her father to rest the way he should have put her to rest years ago. Papa kept his promises. He found work at the mill and came home sober every night, his hands calloused but clean. We never spoke of that poker game again, but I saw the way he looked at me sometimes, like he was seeing a ghost. Maybe he was. I married Tom Henderson the following spring, a good man who asked no questions about the scars on my wrists or the way I sometimes stared too long at the mountains. We moved to California, where the sun shines warm and the shadows hold no secrets. But on clear nights, when the wind carries the scent of pine and snow, I still hear Emma's laughter echoing across impossible distances. She's still up there, still watching, still protecting girls who might otherwise find themselves sold to pay their father's debts. Some guardian angels, I learned, have very sharp teeth.